Ford F150 with a 5.4 liter engine in this thing. Right off the bat, you got to mentally prepare for this. It is going to be difficult for a number of reasons. It had multiple oil leaks on it because I believe what happened was somebody had changed the timing chains and cam phasers and stuff, and when they were done, I don't know if they didn't follow the torquing sequence for the gaskets or didn't replace the gaskets or what the story was, but I pretty much ended up have to redo the whole job minus changing the timing chain. And so to begin with, first thing is I disconnect this so I'm not leaning on that, because you're going to be leaning over the edge here to get at a bunch of stuff. You got a hidden bolt in behind here. It's a big one. You just loosen that off, and then this should be able to pull up, and there's a dowel pin down in there too. So you loosen that off, this will be able to pull up and disconnect it here. That can remove the bracket. You're going to want to remove the 1, 2, 3 bolts for the reservoir. Put that off to the side. That's going to give you access to the driver's side valve cover here, and then you're going to want to disconnect your wiring for the coils all the way back. Disconnect the wires that you need to disconnect to get the wiring harness up and out of the way over here. Disconnect your PCV hose. Loosen off the bolt for your dipstick so that you can push it over to give yourself some more room to get the tappet cover off. Once you've removed all the wiring and components, you can take off that valve cover there. Along the way, whether or not you want to disconnect this or unbolt it there is up to you. So then down in the bottom here, you're gonna need to get yourself like a ratchet wrench to fit in there. I couldn't find any other tool that's gonna get in there. Ratchet wrench to get the 4 bottom bolts off the timing chain cover at the bottom. That was an issue. This power steering pump is a huge issue. Trying to get either a ratchet wrench or a 1/4 inch ratchet with swivel and extensions to try and get at your bolts to remove this off. In behind there is the oil filter adapter. That is also difficult to get at. If you can see it, there's one bolt. Hard to see the other ones, but you can get at those with a whole bunch of extensions and a ratchet from down here, but you're gonna have to disconnect the hoses, which means you got to drain. You're gonna want to drain the rad, and what I did was I put this hose on here and just so it doesn't make a mess, and drain the rad. So there's your drain there. Drain the rad. With this out of the way, you can remove your bottom rad hose. You can remove this hose from here down to that oil filter adapter. Now you got a little more access to get in there with some tools to get this out of there. You can get that out of there if you need to. I had to take that off because I had to change that gasket as well. We had oil leaking from there too. And then over on the passenger side over here, we got the battery tray, the ECM. Disconnect all the wires. Give yourself some room by taking that out of there. Disconnect all your wires. Same thing. Coil, wires, plugs. Get all that out of the way as you need to. You can now, once you've drained the rad, you can now disconnect this and get that out of the way too. There'll be some vacuum lines and stuff. You could get that out of the way, set it on top here, pin it back with some tie wraps or something like that. I noticed down here, this one, this bolt in here, when I got it, it was stripped, and when I went to put this on, after I did that repair, put that on there, it's stripped again, and I think it's because this bracket here is too large for that small bolt, and Ford seems to like to do that. They like to have smaller bolts than they could use larger bolts, but they choose not to, and then they break or strip or cause problems, like kind of like the small spark plugs down in there. I think that's one of the issues why the spark plugs break, is because they're just physically smaller than your average plug. So once you've got all your access here, you can remove that valve cover, and then on the front here we've got our bolts, and those are going to be all the way down and around. But before that, we want to take off of all our pulleys, our serpentine belt, our tensioner. We're gonna have to take off the crank pulley in the bottom there, disconnect our hoses that are off them bottom bolts down there, take all that out. What I found was down here for this sensor, this crank sensor, what I did was I removed the bolt, and then I swivel the sensor so that I can unplug it. Yeah, it just helps. Trying to unplug that without, there's hardly any space in there, and trying to get in there to unplug that's very difficult. Also too, you're gonna have to unplug the wiring there, and then again behind for the oil pressure, for the oil filter adapter, there's a plug-in behind there, and then you can pull that wiring up and get that out of the way too on the driver's side. So the fan, trying to get this this fan off of here, and I don't have that fancy tool, right? Like they got like a wrench that goes on there and hooks onto a jackhammer or whatever, and you can ratchet it off. And I've had other people, they like to use a chisel and beat up the nut, and then you can't get a wrench on there and stuff like that. So my solution for that problem was I just simply built this little tool, piece of flat bar, measured, drilled a couple holes, put that in there, and that's gonna bolt on there, right? Factory bolts. And then I just got this rod, this bolt in here, and then that's just gonna go up against something, and then you can crack that fan off of there. That's how I got that off. That alone caused a lot of grief, because you've got, when you're trying to take that off, you hardly got any room in here, because you got your fan shroud, you got your fan, and you're trying to get your wrench in there, and limited access and stuff, so that can be frustrating too. So then once you take out all your bolts and you get this cover off, then you're going to clean all the surfaces, and then push in your new gasket, and then there's a torque spec. You probably want to look that up if you're going to go through all of this trouble to fix this thing. You want to find the proper torque spec and procedure, and install it all back on there and everything. As far as the oil pan, I don't know if I don't have my light on under here, but basically we're gonna have to remove this bar. You're gonna have to remove this stabilizer bar, and then you want to drop down your front diff here. There is a bolt there that you're gonna take that out, and then it's not gonna fall down here yet, because
you've got to remove a bolt on this side. We can't see it from here. You see it from the back maybe. I don't know if you can see that right there. You get it from the back. You take those two bolts out. Now you can drop that down. That's gonna rest right there. That's gonna give you just a little more wiggle room to get this oil pan out. And then it's gonna be the same thing. You remove the oil pan and clean everything up and put your new gasket on there, and same thing with the torque spec. Now that we're under here, we can see this is, if I can, there you go. This is where you need that ratchet wrench. You can't get in there with anything to get at them bolts, so you have to get at it with a ratchet wrench from the front. And you need to take those out to take the timing chain cover off, and then you're gonna. I left the fan shroud and the fan and all that stuff off so I could put this pan back on, and then now it's time to put all that back together. I think it should be good.